Hello and welcome to Tag Tuesday, in which I discuss the historical fiction page 112 tag. The original page 112 tag was created by Shawn the Book Maniac. I will include a link to his channel in the show notes below. I was tagged by Brian of Bookish. I will also include a link to his channel in the show notes. Before I start, I recommend that you turn on the subtitles if you want to follow along with the reading. I'm going to read a section from All Around, page 112, from each of 3 historical novels, rank them in order of preference, and then reveal what they are at the end. Historical novel number 1. Each of the speakers fell in love with his theory, and to tell the truth, both had taken a hair or two of the dog that had bitten their master to the brain. So their voices presently rose so high that the green sot began to growl instead of snoring. In their heat they did not notice this. Ere long the argument took a turn that sooner or later was pretty sure to enliven a discussion in that age. Hans, holding the bridle with his right hand, gave Ulrich a sound cuff with his left. Ulrich returned it with interest, his right hand being free, and at it they went ding-dong over the horse's mane, pummelling one another and jagging the poor beast till he ran backward and trode with iron heel upon a promontory of the Green Lord. He, like the toad stung by ethereal spear, started a howling with one hand clapped to the smart and the other tugging at his hilt. The servants, amazed with terror, let the horse go. He galloped off, whinnying. The men in pursuit of him, crying out with fear, and the green noble after them, volleying curses, his naked sword in his hand and his body rebounding from hedge to hedge in his headlong but zigzag career down the narrow lane, in which hurtling Gerard turned his back on them all and went calmly south, glad to have saved the 4 farthings he had got ready for trinkgeld, but far too heavy-hearted even to smile at their drunken extravagance. The word green appears 3 times in this passage: green sot, green lord, and green noble, and he is likened to a green toad touched by ethereal spear, which is an allusion to Milton's Paradise Lost. The spear of the angel ethereal, the slightest touch of which exposed deceit. Hence, when Satan squatted like a toad close to the ear of Eve, ethereal only touched the creature with his spear, and it resumed the form of Satan. The 2 servants had taken a hair of the dog, which is a reference to alcohol, and it had bitten their master to the brain, and he began to growl like a dog instead of snoring. Then he began howling like a dog. The word jagging is an interesting one. Jag can mean a drinking bout, but also to jab sharply, to prick. The Green Lord tugged at his hilt, obviously to withdraw his sword, but I have no idea what one hand clapped to the smart means. I've never heard this phrase before, and Google came up empty, so if anyone knows what it means, please leave a comment below. The final interesting expression is trinkgeld. It refers to a tip or gratuity, or in this case it may have been tribute money, or humorously drink money. Geld means to castrate a horse. The whole of this passage is shot through with humorous and subtle allusions to drink, dogs and horses. My opinion is that it is a highly accomplished piece of writing. Historical novel number 2. Father then came from the fields, a large axe carried over one shoulder. He had been stockpiling wood, and his shirt was soaked through with sweat, his hair hanging damp and limp around his neck. He saw Uncle's horse and heard his pace to the house. He gave me a glance, but did not pause to set down the axe at the doorframe, as was his habit. As he passed through the door, the head of the axe caught the wood, cutting a deep gash in the frame. He'd been inside for the span of a few breaths when all talking within ceased. Soon Uncle rushed out the door, stumbling over me in his haste to leave. I followed him, calling out, "Uncle, please stay a while. Uncle, please don't go." But he did not turn to answer me. I had no time to gather up a present for Margaret. What would she think of me when her father returned to her empty-handed? I had not plied my fingers to sewing as I had promised, for the needle she had given me was gone, stolen by Mercy, and I could do no patching without it. The only needle left to me was a coarse one made of bone that was used to mend our woolens. Uncle mounted Bucephalus and snapped sharply at the reins. I ran at his boot heel, panting out, tell Margaret," but soon he outpaced me, and as I reached for the stirrup, I cried, "I'm not like my mother, I'm not like her." I watched him on the road until Mother called for me, but I dragged my heels until she appeared at the door, her eyebrows forming a line of warning beneath the furrows in her brow. When I came into the kitchen, I saw Father's axe lying heavily on the table, the sharpened edge of the head pointing to the place where Uncle had stood. The first thing I observe from this extract is that the writing is very simple and uncomplicated. The axe pointing towards the uncle seems an ominous element, as it indicates that there is some friction between her father and uncle. Also, she was anxious to tell her uncle that she was not like her mother in some way. Historical novel number 3. "Orchid, I can't cope anymore. Take my son, will you? You will be doing me a great favour, but you must be extremely careful with his demon-possessed spirit. It will take away your peace. His trick is to cry round the clock. No one here gets any sleep. Orchid, take my trouble. Strangle this son of a demon if you have to." "Wrong, I won't take him because you want to abandon him. Cai Tian is your son, and he deserves your love. Let me tell you, Wrong, the only thing I regret is that I wasn't able to love Tung Chi enough." "Oh, Mulan the heroine," Wrong cried. Awakened by his mother, Cai Tian opened his eyes. A moment later he broke into a muted cry. As if disgusted, Wrong turned away from him and returned to her chair. I picked up Cai Tian and held him. Gently I rubbed his back. He smelled of urine. Wrong came and grabbed her son from me. She threw him back onto the bed and said, "See, you offer him a penny, he demands $1. Wrong, he's only 3 years old." "No, he is a 300-year-old, a master of torture. He pretends to be crying, but he's having fun." An overwhelming anger and sadness came over me. I felt that I couldn't stay in that room. I started to walk toward the door. Wrong followed behind. "Orchid, wait a minute." I stopped and looked back. She gripped the boy's nose with her fingers. Cai Tian began to scream, struggling for air. Wrong pressed. "Cry, cry, cry. What do you want?" Cai Tian tried to break away, but his mother wouldn't let go. "Do you want me to kill you so that you will shut up? Do you?" Wrong put her hands around Cai Tian's neck until he began to choke. She laughed hysterically. Well, this is certainly dramatic. Here is a woman who wants either to kill her son or to give him away. Who is she, and who is Orchid, and why does she want to kill her son? I think all 3 books are intriguing, each in their own way. None of them is weak. My ranking, based on the literary quality and interest, is number 1, then number 3, and finally number 2. Here are the 3 historical novels. Historical novel number 1 is The Cloister and the Hearth by Charles Reade, which is a tale of the Middle Ages. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle thought that it was the greatest historical novel ever written. When I read it, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I intend to read it again. The Cloister and the Hearth was published in 1861 and is set in the 15th century. It relates the story revolving about the travels of the young scribe and illuminator Gerard Eliasson through several European countries. The Cloister and the Hearth often describes the events, people and their practices in minute detail. Its main theme is the struggle between man's obligations to family and to church. Historical novel number 2 is The Heretic's Daughter by Kathleen Kent. Martha Carrier was hanged on August the 19th, 1692 in Salem, Massachusetts, unyielding in her refusal to admit to being a witch, going to her death rather than joining the ranks of men and women who confessed and were thereby spared execution. Like her mother, young Sarah Carrier is bright and willful, openly challenging the small, brutal world in which they live. In this startling novel, she narrates the story of her early life in Andover, near Salem. Her father is a farmer, English in origin, quietly stoical but with a secret history. Her mother is a herbalist, tough but loving, and above all a good mother. Often at odds with each other, Sarah and her mother have a close but also cold relationship. Yet it is clear that Martha understands her daughter like no other. When Martha is accused of witchcraft and the whisperings in the community escalate, she makes her daughter promise not to stand up for her if the case is taken to court. As Sarah and her brothers are hauled into the prison themselves, the vicious cruelty of the trials is apparent, as the Carrier family, along with other innocents, are starved and deprived of any decency, battling their way through the hysteria with the sheer willpower their mother has taught them. Historical novel number 3 is The Last Empress by An Chi Min. At the end of the 19th century, China is rocked by foreign attacks and local rebellions. The only constant is the power wielded by one woman, Su Si, also known as Empress Orchid, who must face the perilous condition of her empire and devastating personal losses. In this sequel to the best-selling Empress Orchid, An Chi Min brings to life one of the most important figures in Chinese history, a very human leader who sacrifices all she has to protect both those she loves and her doomed empire. Everyone who has a BookTube channel is automatically tagged.